And here's how you characterize Mr. Meadows' general response when people raised concerns about what could happen on January 6th.
So at the time, in the days leading up to the 6th, there were lots of public reports about how things might go bad on the 6th, and even the potential for violence. If I'm hearing you correctly, what stands out to you is that Mr. Meadows did not share those concerns, or at least did not act on those concerns?
Did not act on those concerns would be accurate.
Yeah, that would be accurate. John Heilman, they told the chief of staff of the president of the United States that there were people with AR-15s, with weapons, marching toward the Capitol. Meadows kept looking at his phone, could not care less. It was an extraordinary moment. He really played the role of a Pontius Pilate. While American democracy about to be crucified by this armed mob, he said, I'm going to wash my hands of it. More dangerous in that moment than Ehrlichman or Halderman or Joe McCarthy, because American democracy was actually on the line, and he refused to do anything about it because it might damage his standing with a failed president.
I mean, Joe, I don't even know where to begin. You know, we talked yesterday in real time about this because we both were so sort of stunned by what we saw. And I definitely will say that Mark Meadows, who was already at the very center of this investigation before yesterday, is now, I don't know if you could be more at the center of it, but the committee obviously has its eyes on him, and the pressure is going to mount on him. In terms of his potential criminal culpability, certainly his moral and political culpability. But I don't want to obscure. I don't even want that to obscure the larger picture here, which is what you guys were talking about before. The most extraordinary, or certainly in the running for the most extraordinary congressional testimony in the history of the country, potentially the most consequential, for the reasons you and Willie and Mika were talking about before. You know, what we now know about Trump's intent, what he knew, what he did, what he thought, and as this committee's not yet done building that case, makes it almost impossible, I would think, to not. I mean, the basis for criminal charges is now so abundantly clear, and the pressure on the Justice Department, rightly so, to bring those charges, given what we've now learned about Donald Trump's mindset, what he was willing to do, the things he said, the things he thought, the things he was willing to let go, is just kind of overwhelming. And then the last thing I will say, it may not be the most extraordinary congressional testimony ever. You might want to put John Dean in that category in terms of political consequence. But the scene that we heard recounted yesterday about Donald Trump's behavior in the presidential limousine, I would say is maybe literally the craziest thing ever described by a president of the United States ever. I mean, we could talk about it all day long, but the notion of the president of the United States trying to grab the wheel of the limousine and getting into a physical altercation with his protective detail and lunging apparently for the throat of one of them is so off the charts bonkers that I still am having a hard time processing it now, 18 hours later. I mean, it truly speaks to a degree of madness and unhingedness, at least on that day, that even the sternest critics of Donald Trump had previously not been willing to contemplate. It's really something.
We're going to dig into that part of the story in just a little while. The Secret Service disputes that and says it will present witnesses to testify to that. We'll get to that in just a moment. But despite knowing those supporters were armed, the ones we just talked about around the ellipse, President Trump allegedly became angry when he found out those screening devices, the magnetometers, would stop his supporters from entering the rally area. According to Hutchinson, the former president was not concerned about being the target of violence. Those were his people, he said. They're not coming for me. Or that his armed supporters were planning on marching to the Capitol, but he was concerned turning those people away would make the rally crowd smaller.
He was furious because he wanted the arena that we had on the ellipse to be maxed out at capacity for all attendees. I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
The president apparently wanted all attendees inside the official rally space and repeatedly said, quote, "They're not here to hurt me." And just to be clear, so he was told again in that conversation, or was he told again in that conversation that people couldn't come through the mags because they had weapons?
Correct.
And that people, and his response was to say they can march to the Capitol from the ellipse.
Something to the effect of, take the effing mags away. They're not here to hurt me. Let them in. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol after the rally's over. They can march from the ellipse. Take the effing mags away. Then they can march to the Capitol.
It comes full circle, Katty K. Concerns about the crowd size at the inauguration and now at the insurrection, though this time it was an armed mob that was prepared to go to the Capitol and do God knows what, perhaps hang Mike Pence, go after Nancy Pelosi and others.
Yeah, it says a lot about that presidency, right, that it began and ended with Donald Trump's concern about the size of his crowds, to the extent that he was prepared to say, I don't care if they have to go through screening, let them bring their arms, let them bring their weapons, which he knew about, into the rally and into the march, because I want to make sure that the crowd outside the ellipse where I am standing, that the shots on television show that that crowd is big. It wasn't enough for him that they were on the other side of the street and up on the mall, because that was too far away. It wouldn't show it. I switched while I was watching the hearings yesterday to watch them on Fox News, and it was really interesting. The commentary on Fox, even on Fox News, which, remember, initially didn't even show these committee hearings, the very first one, was saying that it was devastating. They had a former prosecutor on, really raising questions, saying, look, this is pointing towards the Justice Department having to take up a criminal case against Donald Trump. And that word devastating was used. And there was really no pushback from the Fox News hosts. They were all clearly just as shocked as the country was, just as shocked as we all were by Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony yesterday.